What is going on, internet world? My name is Tommy, you probably know me as Rivet, and I'm your coach of the Atlanta Braviaries, the highest flying, flyest looking team on YouTube, and we are here today with the draft analysis and breakdown of our draft for the third season of the Other Meta Draft League, aka the OMDL, where we are doing some SKETCHMONs. This is going to be an incredible season. We got some great coaches, some great teams, and this is going to be a fantastic season. So without any further ado, welcome to the workshop. Alrighty guys, we are here breaking down our draft for the OMDL Season 3, where we are doing SKETCHMONs. Really quickly before we get into that, I did hit 50 subscribers recently, so I just wanted to say a quick little thank you to everyone who watches my videos. I've really loved doing these, and I wanted to, just show my appreciation for all the support that I've gotten. So thank you guys so much. I'm going to keep trying to improve, keep making good quality videos, because it's been a blast so far. So thank you so much. But with all of that out of the way, let's hop into this. So last season we did Mix and Mega, if you might have watched that series, and it was a great time. We had some great stuff going on. And this season we are doing SKETCHMONs. So the way this worked is that we did two drafts. So the first, we had 120 points to draft 11 Pokemon, and it was just a standard points-based National Dex draft, essentially. And then after we concluded that, we had a second draft. We had 60 points to draft 11 moves, and when we drafted each of the moves, we assigned it to one of the Pokemon. So, it would kind of be like a Pokemon learning Sketch, and then being able to, learn a move it wouldn't already know. So there were a couple banned things, obviously, some of the busted stuff like Astral Barrage and Belly Drum and V-Crate. A bunch of that was gone. But there were some really cool options left on the table, and there was a lot of ways that you can increase viability for Mons. So I had either the 5th or 6th pick in the Mons draft, I forget exactly. And so I wanted to try to grab something really strong, obviously. A bunch of stuff went really early. Darm-G went, I believe Mega Lopunny went. But I had a plan for this draft, because with the addition of extra moves for Mons, it increased the viability of wall breakers and defensive pieces, giving longevity. Stuff can get recovery now, which is kind of silly, and just increasing move pools, increasing, offensive pressure, stuff like Swords Dance and Nasty Plot stuff could get, or just expanded coverage. So I thought that a focus of my draft that I wanted to be was momentum. I thought that keeping up the momentum in all of my matches is going to be incredibly important to the season, just because it's going to be so hard to switch into stuff. Defensive pieces, once they're in, they can just stay there forever. So controlling the pace of the match was where I really wanted to make my focus for this. So I just started with my first pick to start that train off very nicely with Tapu Coco. Tapu Coco is obviously one of the best pivots in the game. An incredible Mon, an electric and fairy type with base 130 speed, and the electric surge ability. Thunderbolts and Volt Switches hit incredibly hard. Does get Dazzling Gleam for secondary stab. Gets coverage and stuff like Grass Knot. It can pivot with Volt Switch, as I mentioned. It also gets U-Turn. It can Calm Mind. It can Roost for longevity. It can Defog if it really needs to. And it's just such a fantastic piece to build around. 130 base speed is a fantastic speed tier to start us off. It forces Scarfers every week. It's just such a fantastic pivot. It can move around teams with stuff like Heavy Duty Boots or Choice Specs, something of the sort. And it just, keeps the flow of my match really in my favor. So I was really stoked to use Coco. I've used it like once or twice before, but not for full season. So I'm really excited to see how Coco pans out. Obviously, 95 special attack isn't fantastic, especially when it's going to be running a lot of special moves, because it doesn't get the greatest physical moves. But I could run something with like Wild Charge or Brave Bird or something of the sort with its base 115 attack. And so going into the moves draft, I had a couple options I could go with this. So I could obviously give it something cool, something like a Fairy Stab, which would be really cool. I considered something like Floor Cannon or Play Rough. I also considered something like Ice Beam or Triple Axle to give it Bolt Beam coverage. But at the end of the day, there was really only one option that I felt was most worth it, just because it's so incredibly silly. And you know what? It does the same thing as regular Coco, but throwing Rising Voltage on Tapu Coco in electric terrain is absolutely ridiculous. For a little bit of context, it does over 1.5 times as much damage as a Thunderbolt in terrain to stuff that's grounded. So there's pretty much no switch-ins unless you're a ground type. And then I can just predict, I can U-turn out, I can go for Grass Knot, something of the sort. But stuff that doesn't resist or isn't immune to Rising Voltage or is like off the ground like a Levitator, Voltage smacks it. It's just insane how hard it hits. So maybe this decision might bite me in the butt. I have some transactions. Maybe if I'm really missing something like, something like Play Rough or Floor Cannon, maybe I'll change that out. But I have a feeling that Rising Voltage is just going to be insane on this thing. So I'm really excited to use Coco. And going into my second pick, I wanted to keep the momentum train going, Just, you know, provide something that was another great building block to go around. And I wanted to keep going on one of my cores. So next up, I decided to go with Mega Scizor. Mega Scizor is an incredible mon. Steel and Bug type is a fantastic defensive typing. Incredible stats, 150 base attack in conjunction with Technician Bullet Punch is fantastic. It's a great U-turner. It gets other moves like Knockoff and Superpower. It can Swords Dance up. I believe it can Iron Defense as well. It can Roost for longevity. It can defog hazards away. And it's just such a fantastic piece. Its defensive typing is so good in conjunction with its awesome stats and Roost for longevity. So it's just a fantastic, more defensive pivot, a great slow U-turner, and it just switches on stuff. It complements Coco incredibly well. Those two really, really enjoy each other, I think. So I'm very excited to use this little Volturn core of Mega Scizor and Tapu Coco that I started. And so going into the moves draft, Mega Scizor is already so solid. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted. I definitely wanted to go something with Technician, obviously. So I was considering something like Gear Grind. Gear Grind does a lot. It's essentially a functional double Iron Bash on Mega Scizor, which could have been nuts after a Swords Dance or something of the sort. But I decided, you know, I wanted to expand its coverage. Scizor does have some very reliable checks, especially to offensive sets. Something like a Swords Dance set does get countered pretty often. So I decided to go with a Technician move. I decided to go with Bone Meringue. Bone Meringue was only like 5 points, and on Mega Scizor, it's an absolute beast of a move. Technician boosting it up, it's 275 base power hits at 90 accuracy, and it thrashes a bunch of its hard counters. Stuff like Heatran, you know, big electric types, stuff like Toxipex. You know, this kind of just rips it apart. So I'm really excited for Bone Meringue. It just gives me expanded coverage. In conjunction with Dual Wing Beat, it gives me just a great coverage option for Swords Dance sets and makes me not have to run Superpower to break through bulkier steals, which is fantastic. I absolutely love that option for Scizor. So it definitely lets me run it a little bit more offensively. You know, it's not going to be as predictable with the Swords Dance and Bullet Punch sets, but it does have that option, which is fantastic. So I'm really, really liking this. I'm loving my Fairy Dragon Steel core at the start, at least. So I'm loving Mega Scizor. And moving down next, with my next pick, I wanted to grab some more bulk. I wanted something to complement Scizor. I wanted something to, you know, take care of that big fire weakness that Mega Scizor has. And this I had planned from the beginning. Like I said, I really wanted to control momentum going into this, and I thought that in the first round a lot of, you know, recovery moves were going to be going, but I wanted to take Teleport in the first round because I think Teleport is a stupid move, especially with Regenerator. So you might know where I'm going with this, but with my third pick, I decided to go Toxipex. Toxipex is an absolutely disgusting Pokemon with 152 defense, 142 special defense, and the Regenerator ability. It's just so stupid. Scalds don't really hit that hard, but it can spread some status with burns. It can set Toxic Spikes for that. It can also Toxic. It gets Recover for longevity. Baneful Bunker's a cool signature move. I can also run some scummy stuff with like Merciless if I'm feeling really cheesy. It just, you know, it does essentially the same thing every week, but it's Toxipex. It's just such a hassle to break down. It can haze to stop setup. It just pretty much does everything a defensive Pokemon can want, except pivot. That's the one thing it can't do, but you obviously I gave it away. But throwing Teleport on Toxipex, I think is just kind of disgusting. It just makes it a better Slowking or Slowbro with a fantastic typing with Scizor. So I can teleport into something like Coco. I can threaten away, you know, a more offensive ground type that might want to come in against Coco with my, you know, big Scald or something of the sort, and then just teleport out. Regenerator is going to make me recover a lot of my HP, so I don't necessarily have to run Recover. It's just going to be such a nasty set. So I'm really hoping this works. I am a little bit vulnerable to Taunt, obviously. I was going back and forth between something like Flip Turn or U-Turn and Taunt, but I decided that Teleport was probably a little bit better of an option. So maybe I can work out a trade if it turns out to bite me in the butt. But I think this is going to be fantastic. I'm really excited for Pex. I have not used Toxipex before just because it's kind of a gross mon, and you know it's not really my style, but I think that this is going to be a huge key for this team, controlling momentum, controlling the flow of the game, and it just gives me a great all-around switch into some of the big stuff, you know, things that have expanded coverage. This thing's just disgusting stats. Let me come in, check out what it's going to do, eat a move, you either teleport or just hard switch out, get some HP back. So I'm really excited for Pex. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention nicknames. We're doing Periphery themed nicknames. Periphery, an amazing band, so if you haven't, go check them out. So moving on to the next piece, I wanted something that complemented Toxipex and Mega Scizor, and I just paired this with another bulky water and another draft, and I saw it sitting there for only 14 points, and I thought there was some pretty cool stuff I could do with it. It gives me another momentum on, it gives me some hazard control, which I really didn't have before other than defog on Scizor, and it gave me something that worked really, really well with Pex. So I went with Glasscore. Glasscore I just drafted in SDF, and he's doing his best over there, but I think in this league it's going to be even better, just because I have two absolutely fantastic ice-resistant Mega Scizor and Toxipex. So, Glasscore, you know the drill. It's a fantastic bulky ground type. Earthquakes hit really hard off base 95 attack, Swords Dance up. Facades hit really hard, especially when boosted by Toxic Heal. It just does so many things. It can set Stealth Rocks, it can remove them with Defog, it can knock off your utility, U-turn from momentum. It's got, ridiculous longevity, obviously, with Roost and Toxic Heal. You can run stuff like Sub in conjunction with that to just be really annoying and stall some stuff out. So I'm really excited for Glasscore. I think just the core of Scizor, Toxipex, and Glasscore is going to be really nasty. A lot of stuff is getting expanded coverage, which may make the jobs of those big three a little bit more difficult, but I still think just their raw bulk and their longevity in conjunction with the pivoting they can do between them, especially with something like Coco sitting in the back, which can pivot into them as well and provide a whole lot of pressure. I'm really, really liking this option. So Glasscore, again, I'm using it right now. I'm really hoping I can use it a little bit better. I think I have to, settle into Glasscore. I haven't used it before SDF, and it's something that requires a little bit of, fine-tuning in order to use it properly. And so with my move on Glasscore, I definitely wanted to give it Flying Stab, just because, Earthquake plus Flying Stab is such a great combo. But something like Dragon Ascent went really fast. Brave Bird, I didn't really want to throw a huge big move on it because I was using a lot of points on my moves already. And I saw a really, really cool discount move for only 1 point that I thought was a fantastic fit for Glasscore. So I decided to throw on Beak Blast on Glasscore. Beak Blast is a signature move with 2 cannon. It is essentially a negative priority move, but it's base 100 power, it doesn't miss, and it's got a really, really cool effect. So at the beginning of the turn, Glasscore starts heating up, I guess you could say. And if any mon makes physical contact with it, whether that be something like a U-turn or a knockoff, it's going to actually burn the opponent. So this is a really cool option for Glasscore. It increases its defensive viability a whole lot, just spreading some status. And then at the end, it fires off a big 100 base power flying move, which complements Earthquake incredibly well. So I'm really, really liking that option. I don't know how much I'll bring it, just because Glasscore does often enjoy running a bunch of moves like Knockoff and Earthquake and Roost and U-turn or Stealth Rocks. So I just love that option. It gives it Flying Stab, and just for only 1 point, I thought it was perfect value just for Glasscore, giving it that option, because you have to be wary of that. U-turning into Glasscore isn't safe whatsoever, because if you catch a burn on one of your big attackers, you're really in trouble, especially with this big, stupid, dumb guy sitting in your face when he's already so bulky and sitting here forever. So I absolutely love that option. I'm really excited to see how Glasscore is going to do. I definitely have high hopes. And so moving into my next pick, this was a really pivotal pick for me. I really wanted to grab a dark type. I wanted to grab some offense. I wanted to round some stuff out because, I did draft 3 incredibly big, bulky things in a row. And so I wanted a little bit more offensive prowess. So I was talking things over. I was considering something like Incineroar, something like Umbreon, or Zoroark or something of the sort. And then, my buddy Beater, he's like, you know what, there's a route you could go. You have to splurge a little bit. But I was like, you know what, this is probably the best choice to round out some of my cores. So I went with Hydreigon. Hydreigon I've used twice recently. If you were watching the ISL, you know that Lerny was my boy. I love Hydreigon. So I'm really, really stoked to be using Hydreigon again in this league. It's a Dark and Dragon type, a fantastic special wall breaker with the Levitate ability. It can Draco Meteor, Dark Pulse. It's got a fantastic move pool. Flamethrower, Fire Blast, Surf, Hydro Pump, Earth Power, Flash Cannon. It can Nasty Plot up. It's a great Choice Scarf and Choice Specs user. It can Dragon Dance. It does have a very respectable physical move pool. It can Roost for longevity. It can defog hazards away. It can pivot with U-turn. So I love Hydreigon. It's a fantastic mon. It does so many different things and can really run any set every week. So I'm really stoked for Hydra. But my big problem with Hydra was in the moves draft. I really didn't know what to throw on it just because it gets so many moves already. I was considering something like Knockoff to make something like a Dragon Net set a little bit more viable. I initially had Sludge Wave on here, full disclosure, to hit berries really hard, but it already gets Flash Cannon, and realistically, the only thing it really helps against is something like Azumarill or Tapu Fini. So in Grace, I decided to change it. I decided to throw on Clanging Scales onto Hydreigon. Clanging Scales is a fantastic move. It's Coma O signature move. It's a base 110 power special dragon move. It does lower my defense, and it only has 8 PP, but it hits very, very hard, and it gives Hydra an incredibly spammable dragon type stat. Dragon Pulse does not hit very hard. Draco Meteor obviously lowers my stats really quick, and this just gives incredible longevity, or incredible viability, to Choice Scarf sets. Something like a Choice Scarf in Hydra, it can come in, surprise something, drop a Draco, but then essentially it's got to switch out. It doesn't really have anything else to do. But, this allows me to come in with a Choice Scarf set, or maybe like a Dragon Net set or something late game, and just start mashing Clanging Scales. It's a fantastic move. It is a sound move as well, so it does go through Substitute, which is fantastic. So I'm absolutely loving this on Hydra. I'm loving the option. I can run something like a big Choice Scarf set with it. It also makes Nasty Plot sets a little bit easier. If the team is slow, I can Nasty Plot up and then just start mashing Clanging Scales. I do have to watch out for the defense drop. I don't really want to stay in against a big move anyway, but that is something that I do have to account for and be wary of. So I'm really excited to use Hydreigon again. I think it pairs really, really well with the front four that I've got already, and so I think I have really high hopes for this team so far. I've spent a lot of points, but I think it's worth it. This team is coming together really, really well. So moving into my next pick, I wanted to start, completing my Firewater Glasscore. I have Toxipex so far, but I wanted to move towards that. I wanted a little bit more removal. I wanted a ghost type, and I wanted some more offense. So I decided to go with Dhelmise. I love Dhelmise. This is one of my favorite Pokemon to use in draft. It's an absolutely fantastic Assault Vest user, and with the addition of Poltergeist from Isle of Armor, it's incredibly good. It's got a great move pool. Poltergeist, as I said, Power Whip, Earthquake, Knockoff. Its ability Steelworker essentially gives it stab on Steel type moves. So moves like Anchor Shot, Heavy Slam, and Gyro Ball all hit very, very hard. It can Synthesis if it's not running an Assault Vest set. It can Rapid Spin, obviously. It just gets so many fantastic moves. So I'm really excited to use Dhelmise again. Base 131 attack stat is nothing to sneeze at, even uninvested. It hits really, really hard with those moves I said. It's got fantastic bulk, 100 defense, 90 special defense, often boosted up by something like Assault Vest, and then it is pretty slow, but maybe I can run a Trick Room option, or if I'm just running a defensive set, I don't really care too much. But Dhelmise is a fantastic piece. Again, it works really, really, really well with something like Dhelmise and Toxipex and Mega Scizor. So I'm loving Dhelmise on this. And then going into the move draft for Dhelmise, I had a couple different options that I was considering. I was considering a fire move, something like Heat Crash, to help me hit stuff like Ferrothorn that wanted to come in on this thing pretty easily. But I thought that going along with Steelworker was probably a little bit better. A cool option to put on this thing to take advantage of that ability, just because it is pretty cool and niche. So I decided to put on Doom Desire onto Dhelmise. Doom Desire is Jirachi's signature move. It's a little bit stronger than Future Sight. It's an 140 base power special move that hits 2 turns after it's sent off, and so it hits really, really hard. Dhelmise, obviously, 86 special attack isn't the best. It's not the worst, but Doom Desires, especially boosted off stab, are going to hit really, really hard. It can force some incredible situations with my Hydreigon. Fairies that want to come in to take on Hydreigon like Clefable or something of the sort, they do not want to take a Doom Desire coming from Dhelmise, especially if I decide to be specially attack invested. It just gives me a great option. It gives me another move to throw on Assault Vest sets really, really easily if I don't need anything else. I just need like a Poltergeist, Power Up, Rapid Spin. I just want to throw, Doom Desire on there. I totally can. So I'm loving the option. I'm loving Dhelmise. This is going to be a great mon, I think. I think it works really, really well. It gives me a fantastic Rapid Spinner. It gives me a Spin Blocker as well. And just a really, really versatile mon that can do a whole lot. So I'm loving Dhelmise for this team. And so moving on from Dhelmise, I wanted to continue forming my Firewater Glasscore. So I went with Delphox. Delphox is a really, really cool mon. Very offensive fire and psychic type. Very respectable, 114 special attack and 104 speed. Blaze and Magician abilities, neither of which is super duper useful, but it's got a pretty solid move pool, stuff like Fire Blast, and Flamethrower, Psychic, and Psyshock. Gets Dazzling Gleam, Grass Knot, it can Calm Mind up. That's pretty much it, actually. So Delphox, it's a really cool discount fire type. It finishes off my Firewater Glasscore. Gives me a Psychic type, which I didn't have previously, and builds really nicely off of Hydreigon speed tier. So I'm really excited to use Delphox. I haven't used it before. It's just a fast offensive Psychic type and Fire type, so I'm really liking it. And so with my move draft for Delphox, I definitely wanted to try to do something with Magician, just because Magician's a really cool ability that's almost never used because it's pretty useless. The only stuff you can really run with it is like Power Herb or White Herb, and so for a Power Herb set, I thought that could be really cool. And there's a nifty new move you might have seen floating around that came out recently, so I decided to throw Meteor Beam on Delphox. Meteor Beam is a fantastic move, an 120 base power rock type special move. It's a 2-turn charge move. On the first turn, it raises special attack, and then it fires off in the second turn. It hits incredibly hard, especially coming off Power Herb and being at +1. It sets me up for wall breaking and sweeps in the late game. Base 114 special attack at +1 is nothing to sneeze at. It smashes stuff that Delphox otherwise doesn't want to deal with. Bigger, bulkier fire types, something like a Moltres or Magmortar. Does not want to take a +1 Meteor Beam. And then it lets me do a whole bunch of shenanigans with Magician. Same Moltres, for example. Moltres tries to come in, take something, like a Fire Blast or something from Delphox. I can smack that thing with a +1 Meteor Beam, steal its boots, and just be in a really cool situation. So I really like that option. I'm hoping Magician doesn't bite me in the ass. I get something like Black Sludge at some point. That'd be pretty bad. But I'm really liking the option. It's really cool. I can also just run, Choice Scarf, Choice Specs, or just like Calm Mind 3 attacks, something of the sort, just because Delphox has a bunch of good options. But I love the Meteor Beam option. I hopefully will use it at least once, just because it is really, really cool. And so moving on to my next pick, I wanted to keep going. I wanted to grab some more removal. I wanted a rock type, and I wanted a flying type, just because even Glasscore with Beak Blast isn't super, super solid. So I decided to go with Archeops. Archeops is a really, really cool and interesting mon. Obviously, its stats are absolutely insane. 140 base attack, 112 special attack, and 110 speed, but the defeatist ability really holds it back. Having attack and special attack when it's under 50 HP, I believe, 50% HP, excuse me. But, if it's above that, it's absolutely insane. Stone Edges, Dual Wing Beats, Earthquakes hit incredibly hard. It's a very solid special move pool with stuff like Air Slash, Heat Wave. I believe you get some like like maybe like Grass Knot or something of the sort. It's got a really cool move pool. It can knock off for utility. It can U-turn for momentum. It can stealth rocks. It can remove them with defog. It does a bunch of really cool stuff. It's a great suicide lead with something like Head Smash and Stealth Rock, which is really cool. So I'm excited to use Archeops. I haven't used Archeops before. It's definitely tough to use just because it's defeatist, but something like Heavy Duty Boots definitely helps it out. And so going into the moves draft, I contemplated something like Roleplay to get rid of defeatist, but at the end of the day, it's just not bulky enough to, reliably do something like that. And also just, I wanted to, beef out its coverage a little bit. So I decided to go with a move that I thought was pretty cool. Just because Archeops is a very solid mixed attacker, I wanted to, complement that a little bit. So I decided to throw Shell Sidearm onto Archeops. This is obviously Galarian's Slowbro signature move. It's a base 90 poison move that kind of acts like Photon Geyser, if I'm not mistaken. It can either be physical or special, depending on which would hit harder, which is really, really cool. So if a fairy wants to come in, I can smack that. If it's like a specially invested Clefable, it'll do a whole lot on the physical side. Vice versa, if it's like a special move, if it's a special, or vice versa, if it's like physically defensive. It's just a really cool option that you have to watch out for. If it's neutral, it can just kind of work as like a general Psyshock sort of deal. So I really like that option. I'm hoping it'll do some work. It just gives me some extra coverage for Archeops if I'm running something like a Choice Scarf set or just a Heavy Duty Boots offensive set. It gives me a really cool option to hit those fairies. Just because besides Scizor, my team doesn't super love fairies, mostly just Hydreigon. But bulky fairies are giving me some trouble at this point, so just another option to deal with those. I'm really loving for this team. And so moving on, I wanted a little bit more offense. I didn't have a fighting type yet, and I wanted to grab something to complement Coco, just because Unburdened with terrain is just so easy. So I went with Hitmonlee. Hitmonlee is a fantastic complement to Tapu Coco. Obviously, the Unburdened ability and Electric Seed is just such an easy combo. Popping that, doubling its speed, and letting it fire off some huge moves in the late game. Close combat, knockoff, Earthquake, Blaze Kick, gets so many good moves. It can bulk up, I believe, to set up. It's got very respectable attack at 120. Very solid special defense as well at 110. And then 87 speed is a pretty solid speed tier if I'm running something like Choice Band set. Or I can obviously run something like Choice Scarf. And then Unburdened is just blistering fast. So Hitmonlee I'm very excited to use. Gives me another Rapid Spinner, a more offensive Rapid Spinner. I can use that to clear some hazards and just give me a speed boost. I do also have something like the Fake Out Normal Gem option. I think Normal Gem is allowed. I'll have to double check that before I break any rules. But Hitmonlee's a really cool mon. And so thinking about moves for Hitmonlee, I definitely wanted to give it something that would complement its electric terrain sweeping potential. And Hitmonlee doesn't super love bulky waters. I mean, not a lot does, but bulky waters do pose a little bit of a challenge for Hitmonlee, even in terrain, and it doesn't get something like Thunder Punch. So I decided I had a few more points to spend. I was like, why not? So I decided to throw Plasma Fists onto Hitmonlee. This is Zeraora's physical signature move, and it hits very hard. It's a base 100, base 100 power physical electric type attack that, especially at like +1 or something in electric terrain, it hits incredibly hard. Gives me a great coverage option to hit those bulky waters, something like Tapu Fini that would want to come in on this thing. It's not taking a Plasma Fist in terrain very well at all. It's just a fantastic coverage option. I had points to spend. I didn't really know what else to throw on this thing. I was thinking maybe, something else to pop on Burden, but realistically, I don't need much else other than, Electric Seed with terrain or like Fake Out. So I just like the option of Plasma Fist on there. I think Hitmonlee is going to be really solid. It's something that my opponent has to take into account every single week, because if you don't bring something for Hitmonlee and it just kind of gets in terrain and just kind of smokes you, that's not good at all. So I'm really liking Hitmonlee, and I definitely think the Plasma Fist option is really solid. So moving into my last two picks, I only had 7 more points to spend. I wanted a little bit more bulk. I didn't have a normal type yet. I definitely wanted to patch that up, and I wanted to try to grab some more longevity for the team, just to support, my more offensive mons and try to get them in for free. And for only 4 points, I thought this was kind of a steal. So I'm going with Kangaskhan with my next pick. Kangaskhan's a really cool mon. I drafted it in the UBL and almost immediately dropped it because I needed to make some changes. But I really do want to use Kangaskhan. I'm going to try to keep this around for a little bit longer. But a base 105 HP set is very solid. 95 attack also is not terrible if you wanted to run offensive sets, and 90 speed. It's got solid natural bulk at 80 in both defenses. It's a great Wish Passer with that big HP. Can Seismic Toss for consistent damage. It does get a very solid move pool in conjunction with Scrappy if I wanted to run something like an offensive set, something like Body Slams, Breads and Pairs. So Kangaskhan is just a great piece. It gives me a normal type, obviously, to switch into something like Shadow Ball, something that Dumb Eyes doesn't want to take on. Seismic Toss is just a great, reliable damage option. I love Wish Passing with Kangaskhan just because the HP set is so fat. And it gives me great options to try to get into Coco, keep that healthy, get into Scizor, get into some other stuff if I don't have the option to, keep them healthy by themselves. And so, again, at the end of the move draft, I only had a couple more points to spend. But I thought there was a pretty cool option for only a couple points that I decided to throw on Kangaskhan. So I went with Final Gambit. Final Gambit is a really, really awesome option on Kangaskhan, I think, just because my HP is very, very high, especially if I'm fully invested. And I do have the Scrappy ability, which means that if I fire off a Final Gambit, something is dying, essentially. Because, you know, Kangaskhan, obviously, Kangaskhan's not going to enjoy it. It's going to die. But there's no ghost types that are going to switch to a Final Gambit. And my HP set is big, especially if I'm Choice Scarf. There's pretty much nothing. So this just gives me an awesome nuke option if there's something in the way, something, you know, that's just there. I really don't want to deal with the whole match, or that my team doesn't fare well against. I can just kind of kill it or force something else to die. And it just forces my opponent to consider that every week. Because am I a Wish Passing set, or am I just a Choice Scarf nuke at the beginning of the game to just get rid of something? So I really like that option. I hope it works. I definitely will bring it once at least just to be funny. I can guarantee that. So, you know, watch out for when I'm just going to send Kangaskhan to her death and the baby too, I guess. Oh, that's kind of sad. But we're not going to think about the baby dying. I think it's just Kangaskhan who dies. I don't know if they're part of it. Anyway, I'm rambling. So with my last pick after Kangaskhan, I only had 3 points left. And I wanted something that was a little bit more of a pivoting option. And, you know, for my recent drafts, I've been struggling a little bit with flying type, so I wanted a little bit more of a reliable flying type answer. Obviously, Scizor is not going to want to take flying type moves especially well, especially if it's got something like Heat Wave in the back. Coco definitely doesn't want to either. So I decided to go with a bulkier electric type to help me take those on. And I went with Electric. Electric is a really, really cool mon. I've considered using this in the past, but I haven't before. But it's a fantastic Eviolite user. Very solid natural bulk with Eviolite at 65 HP and then 70 in both defenses. Got 85 attack and 75 special attack, which is nothing to sneeze at. And then 40 speed makes it a great little pivot with stuff like Volt Switch and U-Turn. Because it gets a solid move pool, stuff like Thunderbolt, Discharge, and Volt Switch. It gets Flamethrower. Actually, no, it doesn't get Flamethrower, just Electron does. It gets Giga Drain. It can Coil Up, get some other good moves, get Super Fang, I believe. And it has the Levitate ability, so it doesn't have any weaknesses unless it's something like a Mold Breaker mon. So I'm really liking Electric. It gives me a switch into big flying types, just because I don't want to have to run defensive Coco or something of the sort. It gives me a great slow pivot into some other stuff, and Kangaskhan can heal it up, which is really cool. And I just love Electros. It's a derpy little guy, and it gives me just what I needed for the team to round it out. So I'm really liking the team so far. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, I threw Octazooka on Electric just because it's got like a 50% chance to lower accuracy, and I thought that was really, really funny, especially with Electric, just because he's so stupid. So if I can cause some scum with Octazooka Electric, it's going to be hysterical. I'll probably bring that once, at least once too, just to be stupid. But that's the team we are rocking with for this season. I'm very stoked on how this came out. I'm really hoping I can execute my team plan the way I wanted it to, because I really love the momentum offense I've got going on so far. You know, the combination of the Volt turning and the Wish passing and everything else. It's just going to be a whole hassle for my opponents to keep track of. But we've got a whole lot of really scary stuff we've got to go against. Starting with our week 1 battle against Willow Rush and the Kanto Fire type chickens. He's got some silly stuff going on over there, like Knockoff, Darmg, Sticky Whipsicle Fable, Flamethrower, Mega Sceptile. So we've got a full plate ahead of us, but this is going to be a fantastic season no matter how it goes. We've got some great content for you guys lined up, just because, you know, SKETCHMONS, absolutely super cool. So leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you enjoyed the team. Comment your favorite pick, what you think I should change, you know, any particular thing. Subscribe if you guys are new. Stick around. We got a full plate of Pokemon content coming up, and so thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.